I want to end our conversation by looking at the children. So, a child who goes through the whole parental alienation process and unfortunately may not have been able to repair with the targeted parent, can you share some of the long-term side effects on children who are maybe adults or a little bit older who have gone through that kind of alienation?
I can. I do want to say that it can be overwhelming for targeted parents to hear this like long list of like potential negative effects. And I think it can be very, disconcerting. And just because there's a long list doesn't mean that every child has all of them or even any of them. And I also know that there's sort of a buzz sometimes on the internet about negative outcomes associated with alienation, which I don't think are research based, like suicide, for example. There is no research on that. It doesn't mean that some alienated child somewhere didn't, maybe hurt themselves. I could imagine that could be possible, but I don't want people saying, oh, well, if your child's alienated, they're at risk of suicide. I just don't think it's helpful. And there's absolutely no research to follow up on that. So also before I list the negatives, the people that I studied and the research didn't really differentiate between mild, moderate, and severe alienation. And we have to sort of go from the premise that the kids who are going to have the worst outcomes are going to have more exposure to alienation behaviors, become more alienated for a longer period of time. So it's not like, oh, my ex is bad mouthing me, my kid's going to grow up and have depression and anxiety. It's not that clear cut. So in terms of the negative long-term outcomes for alienation, interestingly, they're pretty much the same negative long-term outcomes that are associated with being in a cult, because alienation is sort of a mini cult. It's over controlling an individual through thought reform, sort of manipulation of their thinking, manipulation of their emotions. Cults require and induce unnecessary dependency. Oh, where would I be without the cult leader? He knows what I need to eat for breakfast, right? So that's sort of what happens in alienation. I need this one parent. They're the only one who knows me. They're the only one who loves me. Everybody else is bad and wrong and stupid, and I'm totally tied to this parent's approval. So there's a real analogy between being in a cult and being in an alienation dynamic. And so the outcomes are pretty much the same: depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, difficulties becoming self-sufficient. There's sort of this saying in the cult world: if you have an 18-year-old and they go into a cult for 10 years, what do you get at the end of 10 years? You get an 18-year-old. They haven't learned any skills. They don't know how to take care of themselves. Their critical thinking hasn't been supported the way in non-cult life we support 18-year-olds in learning new skills: driving, banking, going off to college, etc. Alienating parents generally want to maintain that kind of control over their kids, and so they don't really support them in becoming fully realized, authentic, independent adults. So that's depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, difficulties in adult attachment relationships, difficulties becoming self-sufficient adults. Those are sort of the main ones.
Yes.